Betty O'Shaughnessy, and I'll give you a little background. She has a master's in history from Loyola University here and a PhD in political science from the University of Illinois, Chicago. And if you remember a few months ago when we had Dick Simpson as our featured speaker, Betty and Dick Simpson are authors of the book, Winning Elections in the 21st Century, which was published in 2016. And she also has a work in progress. She's editor and co-author of a multi-author book on Chicago's recent mayors. Well, we'll be looking forward to that one, Betty. She comes from a family of public servants. Her father and grandfather served as aldermen for the Rogers Park, West Ridge neighborhoods. She's an educator. She's a retired social science teacher, assigned students to be involved in civic engagement and had them serve as election judges or work in a political campaign for a candidate of their choice. She worked in the service learning program where students worked in community service programs for various organizations. She's a visiting lecturer in political science at the University of Illinois, Chicago and Oakton Community College. She has been an elected official for the West Deerfield Township trustee in Lake County and West Deerfield Township Democratic Organization precinct committeeman, which she still is. So I would like you to welcome Betty O'Shaughnessy, who's going to be speaking today about what we did for the election and what we're going to do moving forward. Go, Betty.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Now, the other thing that's happening is there's changes in allegiance. There's a thing in political science called critical election. And this, what happens is people change their parties permanently. And I think this is a critical election. It's a very important one. In 1932, we had a critical election and blacks became Democrats and unions were both sides and they became Democrats and so on and so forth. What we have with this is we see something called the Lincoln Project. How many of you are watching the Lincoln Project commercials? They're Republicans.
They're great. I know, they're great.
They're really, really quite good. Well, what they decided, I'm just going to read straight from something I took notes from this guy that was a Lincoln Project guy. His name was Mike Madrid.
Oh, okay.
And he was asked on the Nate Silver podcast, are Lincoln Republicans going to be able to work with Republicans ever again? He said no. And they are worried more about the threat to the country and they cannot get over the Republicans that stayed with Trump. And more and more and more Republicans are secretly, in the office holders, are secretly going over to these Lincoln guys. But there's more and more that are just walking in, not saying a word to anybody and voting for the Democrats. They don't want to work with these Republicans anymore that sold their souls. They reject the identity grievances of Trump. You know, Trump's always saying something nasty about somebody. They can't stand that. And they believe that the stakes are much higher than the existence of the Republican Party, because people say, how can you do this? The Republican Party is going to end if you don't stop. They said, this is much higher. This is about the country. And so the Republicans are in trouble because they're either going to be Trumpsters or I think they're going to turn into moderate Democrats. But on the other hand, some people think that the Democrats are in trouble too, because we have, if Joe Biden doesn't win, he's a moderate Democrat. What about the progressive Democrats? Are they going to split? Are we going to have three parties? So this is the kind of thing we look at, and we really don't know exactly what's happening. Now, the thing that I didn't know that I thought was very, very interesting was that the the work that the Lincoln Project is doing is they're going door to door. They're working with local campaigns. And so they have things that they're doing that they're teaching the Democrats that this is how we would do it if we were trying to win. And now we're working for you. So listen to us. We know something. And one of the things they did was they developed a new Southern strategy. Does anybody remember the Southern strategy that Nixon had?
Yeah.
You turn all the conservatives in the South Republican by being racist. And they're
That
saying,
really started with Kefauver.
well, yes, it did. You're right. It did. I was a little girl then, so I didn't remember.
Nixon really perfected it. I remember that in the
Anyhow, the TBA and all that. Yeah.
I remember my dad going as Estes Kefauver to a costume party when I was a little girl. Anyway, one of the things they have is in something called a new Southern strategy. And there's 3 prongs to this. Let's get the Southerners to vote for Biden. And first of all, you target areas to get people. And the first target area is white suburban women. White suburban women voted for Trump in 2016. And when I found that out, I was extremely upset. But a lot of the votes that Hillary didn't get came from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the Republicans are saying, target these women and get them to realize that this guy is bad news. Well, it's easy for any woman to see that Trump is bad news because he's such a sexist. Also target seniors that are over 65. A lot of seniors over 65 in 2016 voted for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, get these people. And another place you target is you go with the Hispanics, you go with the Blacks, you target them, but you don't treat Hispanics like a special group. You find stuff for them to do in all the other things you're going to be doing, like knocking on doors and everything else, but you might have a slight Hispanic tinge to it, like your neighborhood or something like that. And what you do by doing that is you expand the battlefield. You don't just have the places that Biden was going to work on, Michigan and Wisconsin and other battleground states. Go after places that nobody would ever think of going to that was a Democrat. Go to Georgia, go to Arizona, go to Texas. Now we're seeing that there's a good chance that Biden might take at least Arizona. Maybe Georgia. I don't know about Texas. They did too much funny business under Tom DeLay with that. And so Trump is going to have to go to like 15 battlefield areas instead of just 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
So that will not work very well. And also make a point that Trump sells out working people. And that was working too. Trump has less of them too. And that's sort of what happens with that. Now, and I wanted to tell you about the social media changes. In 2016, they depended on both candidates, and all the candidates depended on social media a lot. They put their ads in social media, and they did that constantly. And you had a lot more robocalls. Robocalls, I don't know. I'm going to ask you this. I'm a precinct captain. That means that I am not on the call list. So I'm not getting any calls. If you want to not have any calls, become a precinct captain. It's wonderful. But how many of you, have you been getting a lot of calls?
I got a few.
I don't
Not
know. I
like
don't
every
take any
day.
calls that I don't recognize the person calling.
That's why I don't phone bank, because I don't pick up. And I know I will do cards, or I will do anything, flyers. I won't do phone banking because I won't pick up phones that I don't recognize. And I assume a lot of people are like me. I'm tired of that.
Well, one of the things that happened with the call lists is that if you had a landline, nobody'd answer the phone. and they didn't have very many cell phones, but cell phones people will still answer. But that people don't have that on their list. So that's kind of changed it. What you also have is micro targeting, because it's turned out that people don't need to call you, and they don't need to do anything with people. All they have to do is look at their Facebook pages, because everything or even if you buy stuff online, everything we do tells marketers what to do. Everything. It's just crazy how that works. Because, well, I'll give you some examples. Some of these are kind of old, but they're kind of funny. There was a guy named Brady who was running for governor of Illinois 2010. And when he was in the legislature, he was a Republican. He was in the legislature. He had a bill that came out that was to euthanize dogs and cats en masse if they were in bad places. And he took the bill back right away. But the damage had been done, because what his Democratic opponent did was they put articles about him doing that in places where people had a lot of pets, like the suburbs. He lost big time. Well, not big time. He lost closely, but those people wouldn't vote for him because he killed kitty cats and doggies. And that's the kind of thing he had. Al Franken wanted to get the farmer vote when he was running for senator. And what he did was he found out where all the farmers were online. And he would put on their pages, nobody else's, stuff about how he's so good to farmers. And he had the stuff, showed him doing good things for farmers. And it worked. There's another thing called data analytics, and they find out who you are and where you are and everything like that online. And there was a guy named David Bratt that was running for Congress in Virginia, and he was running against Eric Cantor, and Eric Cantor was the majority leader in the House. He was very popular.
Yeah, right.
And he was running against this guy. He was the only candidate he had. He was like, who is this guy? He was an economics teacher in some little teeny college. Bratt spent $100,000. That was all he had. And did data analytics and sent stuff out to all the people he knew would be for him. And they volunteered for him. And they went knocking on doors, and they made the phone calls. He found who he wanted. And they defeated Eric Cantor. It was a surprise election. But now the thing is that we see all of these kinds of changes that happen. And so all this stuff goes down. And so elections have changed. Until COVID, the most effective way to reach voters was to knock on their door with
Right.
all of this stuff going on. Now, I'm going to look and see if my friend that did the Post-it notes and talked to people, she backed up and talked to them. I did not do that. And to see if that worked.
Well, thank you very much, Betty. This
You're
has been
welcome.
very interesting, and
Oh, thank you.
all the statistics. And I hope everyone enjoyed it.
You should have seen the statistics I didn't show you. I had pages of them.
Well, it's hard to do on a Zoom.
Yeah, well, I think there's a way. I just don't know how to do it. It was nice meeting you.
Very nice having you here. Thank you for your insights.
Okay, well, we'll all see what happens in about a week.
Yes.
Okay.
And does anyone else have any community news before we adjourn? Okay, then meet you here again next first Tuesday of the month of December. Georgia will have something up her sleeve of fun for us to do. So
Oh,
have a
was
good
that-
afternoon, everybody. If you
Good
haven't
afternoon.
voted, vote.
Yes. By far.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.